Hello, and welcome to yet another edition of the Personal Transformation Experience podcast with me, David Brand, and my wife, Maureen Brand.
That's me.
Today's topic is stop arguing, something we do a lot, effective communication and connection with your partner.
Well, yeah, stop arguing. I mean, I don't know. I don't think necessarily that arguing is a bad thing.
Right.
But it's how we argue. Stop, having ineffective communication is really kind of more towards what we're going to talk about. Because I think a good juicy argument is fun.
And I think arguing can be like a cough, right? And the doctor will say to you, is your cough productive or not? Or is it just a dry hacking cough and nothing fucking comes up, right? So I think in a way communication is like that too, right? If you're coughing and you're getting stuff up and everything and it's clearing out your lungs.
That's kind of gross, but okay.
That's an example of effective cough. So I think, a communication argument with your spouse, right, can be like you're just calling each other names and you're walking away heated and angry and you're saying, I don't know why I'm with this person. And, you're having conversations about your partner with other people, but not with your partner. That's not effective. That's not going to bring things up and make it productive.
Well, I think the minute you shut down and walk away, the whole everything is lost. I mean, you can't, that's the big thing. I think what saved us, even though we argued a lot, and we still do argue.
Yes.
We never shut down and walk away. Like we didn't stop talking. Right. We just kept fighting.
And we've had times, I remember early on when we spent more time with your family and your mother, she was like, are you guys okay? You guys fight a lot.
Yeah.
And we're like, no, we're fine.
We're fine.
Yeah. And actually, maybe when you think about it reflectively in her own relationship, maybe with your father, they didn't fight, they didn't talk, and they were kind of shut down and more separate.
Well, that's what I think is worse. Like, if you don't argue and fight, and have productive arguments where something's resolved, something's worked out, or you come to a place of decision, or where you agree to disagree. But you come to a place where you worked it out, you both felt heard, which is critical.
It is.
You both felt validated, super critical. And maybe you still don't agree, but the one side understands the other side, or at least you both feel like you are understood.
Right.
And heard. And that's all that matters. You can revisit it later, or think about it, and could be another conversation sometime. But I think when you shut down, when you shut down, and like you just try to have like, you're working on eggshells around your partner, and you're not able to initiate a conversation, or you're always trying to keep it pleasant because you don't want to fight. I think the biggest,
you can't be afraid of it.
You can't be afraid of it. I think what happens is the fear is not so much being afraid of the confrontation. Not everybody likes confrontation. That's true. I don't either. But what I was more afraid of in the past, in past relationships, is feeling vulnerable when trying to communicate, initiating a conversation and feeling rejected, but I think it's so important to have the confidence within yourself, because it's good to have a partner that you feel you trust and you can feel vulnerable with in having a conversation. But at the same time, you also need to have the confidence to know that I'm going to put myself out there. That's what I'm supposed to be doing in this relationship. If my partner rejects me, then that's on him. Something's going on with him,
right,
or her, that they can't handle my initiating this conversation. So it's on them. I'm not the one who's less than or not enough. It's not to say your partner's not enough, but they're the ones who are rejecting you. So something's going on. So you want to kind of figure that out. Right. Like, what's happening? I realize that I feel like this is really hard for you right now. Don't take it as a rejection, because then you will walk away and you'll be afraid to go back and continue the conversation, because you feel rejected and ashamed. Right. And that's something I think we need to look at inside ourselves when you feel that way. Because I was there. I was afraid to have a confrontation, because when I felt rejected, or I felt like this person said something to me that I don't like. I was always, I didn't start a conversation or confront anybody because I didn't want them to make me feel bad. I don't want them to say anything. I didn't want to hear what they had to say because it was going to make me feel bad or ashamed or embarrassed or whatever.
Or lead to you feeling bad, right? Because
right.
I think we're big believers that nobody makes you feel a certain kind of way. They can trigger things in you, which we're going to talk about an example
Well,
of
that's
that
not what I was saying. They weren't making me feel that I would feel a certain way if they said so. I would avoid it.
Right.
Because I was afraid to feel these ways.
Right.
Right. So there was a part of me that was like, and that was just the parts coming out and running the show. Right. If your higher self comes in and has the confidence to know that it's not about you, it's about them. You're putting yourself out there. You're in a committed relationship with somebody. You put yourself out there, whether it's initiating intimacy or a conversation. You're vulnerable both times. Mm-hmm. And it's a scary place, especially if you're in a place where you don't know where to begin. Right. And so I think we need to look at those moments, and somebody has to break the ice.
Yeah.
And then just while you put yourself out there, put it out there that, let's talk about this. I feel like this is really hard for us. I feel like you're having a hard time. I'm having a hard time. Let's figure this out. I love you. Let's make this. I mean, if you really want it to work and you want to be closer to that person, put it out there and just put your cards on the table. And I guarantee you, your partner will step up if they want the same things.
And that's the connection part, right? It's because the title of our podcast today is communication and connection. Connection,
yeah. And because if you put yourself out there and you show themselves that you're not afraid to be vulnerable with them, it'll kind of break the ice and let them feel like, oh, okay, if you can be vulnerable, then I can be vulnerable.
Right.
And you can even say, you can trust me. I love you. I want the best for you. I want to be close to you. And once they feel that sincerity and authenticity, I can't imagine, unless they want something else, that they wouldn't meet you where you are, or at least meet you halfway.
So I think we should dig into the example that we wanted to share with everybody today. And part of this was having that recognition when you're responding or you're responding in a negative way to something your partner is saying.
Yeah.
And going into the idea that there's this part of us, right, that's trying to protect us. So this ties back to what we talked about a few weeks ago about the internal family systems model of therapy, right? Looking at that we have these parts that originated in an earlier part of our life, maybe childhood, young adulthood, and these parts took occupancy, right, within our brain, really, to protect
our
us,
bodies,
right? And thinking they're protecting us, right? So we had an episode, I don't know what you want to call it, right? We were out walking the other night, Thursday night.
We were having a conversation.
We were having a conversation while we're walking. And I had raised this idea when talking about your child, Finn, who has high-functioning autism and the social awkwardness piece that comes with that. And I had made a comment about how at times they'll make derogatory comments about groups, and that maybe that derogatory comment is a way of masking the fact that I really feel like I want to belong, but I feel like these people aren't going to allow me to belong with them. So I'm going to make that choice and saying, I don't want to be part of that group. Then I don't have to, it's not a rejection. I can reject them. And, it's kind of like a way of, like a protector part there. However, when I initiated this conversation, you got escalated.
I did. Well, I started feeling escalated without expressing it, because I started feeling some kind of way. Like I was getting frustrated. I was feeling like you were talking about my kid like they were sad and pathetic, and it made me angry, and it made me want to jump to their defense. And let's just put this out there. I have no idea what the internal event is with my child. I don't know what's going on in their minds. Right. I don't know that this is how they feel. We were just talking about it because we talk about our kids, and this is what we do, right? We talk about our concerns. We talk about all of our kids.
Yeah, and I was coming at it from the realm of this is possible. Not that I think this is what's happening.
Right.
It's I always think about what what multiple things are possible.
Right. And in my work, I work with the neurodivergent community as a coach and stuff. So these are good things to tease out for me so I can help other families. So we're talking about this stuff because this is what we live, right? It's our lived experience. So that said, I was getting angry, and like I got to the point where I just felt like I wanted to punch you. Like I just was like getting very hostile, but I wasn't saying anything, and I was just focusing on like, why am I feeling this way? So then I interrupted you and said, stop. Like I'm feeling like some kind of way here. I'm getting very angry. I feel like you're saying this, this, and this. This is what I'm hearing. And I don't like it. I don't like what you're saying. And I know you're not saying it to sound that way, but this is how there's a part of me that's taking it this way. So I got really angry, but I didn't like get angry. Like in the past, I would say I would get nasty right away with you without realizing my part had taken over, that part of me that was like trying to jump to my kid's defense. So when we talked about it a little bit, I started realizing that that's kind of how I felt as a child, right? So I couldn't fit in with people. I was awkward. I am a little neurodivergent. And so I think as a young kid growing up, I struggled to make friends. I didn't fit in. The times that I did, I was very uncomfortable with it, and it didn't last. And then, I was bullied, severely bullied. So I think that, I always kind of felt sad and pathetic, or maybe people called me that. I don't know, but it was triggering. So there's that part of me that, I had to like dig down and figure out what it is that I was feeling that way that triggered me when you talked about my own child, because this happens time and time again. Someone says something negative about my kid, and I'm like, no, like you don't get to say that about my kid. So, and there are times when they are actually saying negative things, and so, but I am hypervigilant, as we talked about last time. I have that hypervigilant side because of my own life experiences and having a child with disabilities, with autism. So I think that's where we were, and that's how we got to that part of the conversation. So I had to explain to you I'm being triggered because you became defensive.
I did. I was trying to explain my position.
Yeah, and
instead of saying, "Tell me what it was," or what I said that.
Tell me more about that. Tell me why.
I didn't express curiosity.
Right.
I was trying to defend. Oh no, that's not what I intended. That's not what I said.
And I stopped you, and I was like, no. I'm not upset. It's not what you said. It's something about me is being triggered.
Yeah. And it didn't even register with me at first.
Yeah. So I had to a couple of times I was like, this is not about you defending it. It's about me right now. And that changed the dynamic of the conversation, and the whole flow of the conversation went a whole different direction. And we started talking, it became very productive. And we started talking about how certain things trigger each other, me, you, whatever. And it's not to say we weren't talking about something important about our kids and about the dynamics of how they work socially and, autism and all those. But I think it took a more productive route, because instead of me getting nasty and upset and us actually fighting, which would have ended up, okay in the end. I mean, I looked at what I was feeling and focused on it and realized immediately, this is not me. This is a part that has come up and it's making me feel this way. And I recognized it immediately. 5 years ago, I would have never done that. 2 years ago, I would have never done that. So that's super important. And I think when we have that we put that space, and that's what I did. I put space between my reaction and my response to what was the external stimuli, if you
Good
will.
Point, yeah, because we've talked about that a bit.
Yeah, here. I put a lot of space between it, because instead of like reacting to what you were saying, I responded in a mindful way about what I was feeling. And I think that's core. I think that's crucial for people to recognize that that's what's happening to them. When you feel some kind of way and somebody's saying something, it may not be what they're saying, because chances are the people that are going to upset you the most are the people you're most close to, right? If they're a stranger, what do you give a shit what they're saying, right? But the people that are going to push your buttons or trigger you the most intensely are going to be the ones that you love the most or closest to. And so
why
when
is that though? I'm not sure I'm clear on why you think that is.
I think that's because they know you best. They know you know each other really well. You've had a long-term relationship with these people, whether it's family or not. So they know who you are. They know what's going to upset you. You know what they're going to say. You know, sometimes you have this like cyclical dynamic that's not healthy, that goes around and around and around, and then somebody has to stop it and change course. Otherwise, it's just going to keep doing that, and it's going to be an unhealthy, toxic. That's how it becomes toxic.
Right. So,
yeah, I mean, but only people closest to you can do that, and that's because you know each other so well, and you have a history. A stranger, and you also care about what they say and think. Right? You care about them. You care about what they say and think. I wouldn't be upset if my family said things if I didn't give a shit about what they thought.
Yeah.
Or felt about me.
Fair.
So everybody wants to be accepted by their family and their parents. Most people. I mean, I shouldn't say everybody, but usually when you're younger, that's what you need, that acceptance. As you get older, you don't have to feel that way, but you're still going to feel some kind of way about what happened when you were younger. I think that's always going to be, if you end up separating from your family, there was a reason you did that, right? Some kind of traumatic event, or they didn't agree with you. Like you said, that's a hard thing to do. You grow up with people and then you separate from them. That's
you cut ties.
Amazing. Yeah.
And to some extent, right, we have that on both sides of our family too.
Yeah.
Where we have some either estrangement to some extent, either totally or partially.
Right. And that's where the communication gets really tricky, and you end up going into this cyclical toxic dynamic, if you will. And I think that's what we kind of learned to shift away from. And even now, my conversations with my family, they're not like that. Like I've shifted away from it because I handle it differently. I show up differently.
Right. And when you change yourself, right, then the outer world changes. Does that saying we always say, when we change the world within us, we're also changing the world around us.
Yeah, yes. And also I have had to call them out, family members, like you do this all the time. I don't like it. It has to stop. It's going to stop. And it did. So I think sometimes a family member may not realize they're doing something to hurt you. Although you think to yourself, well, I mean, you're making fun of me in this way. Like, how could you think that that's okay? You wouldn't want someone doing that to you, but okay. So I let them know, and it stopped. And that's important that they listened, they heard, and they stopped. If they don't stop, then you absolutely need to not continue having a relationship, because that's not that. Yeah. They have to respect your feelings,
because effective communication is being, having that curiosity, right? Saying, what is it that I said that's leading you to feel this way? However, that doesn't give people permission to insult you.
No.
Or
no one has permission to do that.
Or judge you or call you names or things like that, right? So
you don't have to tolerate. Nobody should have to tolerate that. Nobody. That's not okay.
Right. You have the right to say to somebody, I don't allow people to speak to me that way. Yeah. So if you can approach this conversation with curiosity and trying to come from a listen to understand approach. I had to give some coaching to somebody years ago at work because they were having arguments with coworkers about something. And I said, are you listening to defend your position or listening to understand? Well, I'm definitely trying to defend my position. I'm like, how's that going? Yeah. Well, not well. The other people doesn't see my point of view. I'm like, well, because you're trying to jam it down their throat, right? You're not... Right. What if you turned that around and said, hey, I know we don't agree, but I'd like to know more about why you feel that way. I'd like to know more about why you believe that. Or,
getting information, even with your own kids, but getting information with adults or other people, doesn't mean you agree or you move the boundary or you give permission to do anything. It's just getting information. The more you know, the better you're going to be in a relationship with that person. So the more information you can get. And then when you get that information, when I worked with a family recently, the mom, I had her listen to her child about why something happened at school, because she had a meltdown. The parent, they had like a big fight and it wasn't good. And she learned something that she didn't know. She's like, oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that the teacher did this and you did that.
Right.
Now it makes sense. But so I when I got her alone and I said, this is why it's so important that you listen to understand.
Right.
So I know you're getting frustrated and she might be screaming and getting upset because guess what? This is the safe place. She knows she's safe with you. She can't do this anyplace else. She's a kid on the spectrum. She feels all kinds of ways and she's at school all day. She can't lose her shit in school. So she comes home and she loses it. It's not about you. It's about her being able to express herself and feel safe. She may say things that are hurtful, but you can't take them personally.
Right.
And that I learned, it took me a little time. But by the time my own child was in their tween years, I figured that out pretty quickly. Like I didn't take anything they said personally anymore because I realized they were just having a hard time. So, but yeah, she learned something that she didn't know and then she got it. Then she understood why what happened and they were able to move on. And now she's slower to I haven't heard them having this kind of explosive reaction to each other in a couple of weeks now. So it's.
Yeah, and it's the term that people would commonly refer to as jumping to conclusions, right?
Yes.
So if you're not actively listening, you're not seeking to understand, then you can form your own conclusions. You're making a judgment call about what is going on without having all the facts. So going back to our walk the other night, upon reflection, and reflection repair is so critical, right? Being able to come back and say, I've reflected on how I responded, and now I've had some time to think about it. I think. Perhaps a better response to you getting escalated was to say, hey, let me understand, I need help understanding. What was it that I said that is leading, you appear to be visibly upset right now to me, right? Because I don't want to say you're upset, right? Because I don't know that you're upset, right?
Right. The worst thing to do is tell people how they feel.
Right. So say,
it's just asking for trouble.
You appear to be upset. I'm not sure that that's what I'm seeing.
It seems like you're having a hard time right now.
Right. What is it that I said that is leading to you, having this reaction, right?
Yeah.
And then we could have dug in a little bit more versus me trying to double down and re-explain myself 3 times.
Yeah.
As to what the point I was trying to make, because that wasn't the root cause of the issue.
No.
The root cause of the issue was something deep inside you coming to the surface that was getting triggered ultimately.
Right.
But by my continuing to defend myself, it wasn't going to help resolve the trigger issue.
Right.
Me being curious and asking very open-ended questions about, tell me what I said that's leading you to feel this way.
Yeah.
Why do you think what I said is causing you to feel this way? And just getting you to kind of talk to it and work through it. That also helps me understand you better, right? Because in future discussions, then I'm able to say, or even think, right, proactively, and I'm going to say this, and it may lead to you being upset, but I want to be able to say this. So just give me a moment, right? It's just kind of asking for space from you or permission to say something that I know in the past has been triggering for you.
Yeah.
So almost kind of setting it up so we can kind of go into it without judgment, and neither one of us being defensive, right? And just being open to having that discussion.
Yeah.
Because, honestly, where I was coming from is the idea that I don't think we ever want to assume we know why people's behavior is what it is.
Right.
Right. And that's more where I was coming from. It wasn't to say, I know that's your reaction from that triggered part was, that protective part was, well, I'm trying to say something negative about your kid that somehow reflects on you or your own past experience, where I was just trying to say this, in the realm of possibilities, this could potentially be something that your child is feeling. Not sure.
Right. We don't know what's going on.
So sometimes I'm just, because my mind is always going to, well, there could be 10 different reasons why somebody's behaving this way.
Right.
I don't want to go to, they're behaving this way because somebody offended them. I don't know that for sure.
No.
So that's where I was trying to open up. But however, again, the point being that I could have been more curious about why you were feeling the way that you did instead of defending myself.
Yeah.
So curiosity versus defensiveness is going to improve the ability to communicate effectively.
Yeah.
And connect.
Yeah. The minute you recognize you're being defensive, you want to switch out to curiosity immediately.
Right.
Because the more you defend, the more people are going to go on the offensive, I guess, if you will. I mean, they're going to push back. Nobody wants to be convinced that they're wrong. nobody can be. Like, there's nothing you could do to convince somebody they're wrong. If they feel like you're wrong and you're like, they have an idea about something and then you start defending each other, no one's getting, it's around and around it goes. No one's getting anywhere. But what I was thinking about when you said that was the other day, like, you know, Finn got really upset about something. And I tell you, this is not easy to do in the moment. Like, even all my years of experience, you know, and coaching, I could easily do it with other people. But when it's your own child, when it's somebody you care about, you're in a relationship, your partner, your husband, your child, and they get upset, I was really like challenged to find the words to say, to validate, to, you know, I'm glad we're talking about this. You know,
Right.
like I was stuck in that moment. I couldn't think because I could feel the emotions pouring off of him. And this is where my hypervigilance and my super empathicness comes in, because I can feel so much from him, and I didn't know what to say. Like, I was scrambling for something to say. I just sat down with him and I let him talk, and I was kind of, I wasn't sure what to say, what the right thing to say was, because I didn't want to escalate it more. Mm-hmm. And if I say the wrong thing, I will escalate it more with him, like that. Like, that's what happens. And interestingly, when we talked about it later and you said something, and I was like, I wish I could have remembered to say that. I thought, you know, because you said, well, you could have approached it this way, or you didn't say you could have, but you said something, but you gave me like a couple of sentences things I could have said in the moment that I couldn't think to say.
I don't remember what those ideas were that I gave you.
But they were great. And I was like, man, I wish I could have thought about that, you know, in the moment. So it does take practice. It's not easy. And I'm not saying I do this every time. Right. You know, it's hard. We have to work I caught myself this one time out of 10 other times that I didn't?
Yeah, I have to sometimes I catch myself in the moment. Sometimes afterward I reflect, and sometimes right away, sometimes the next day. This happens at work, and I go back to the person, you know, upon reflection, and this is the repair part, is going to that person, upon reflection, I realize I could have handled this differently. I don't necessarily like to come in and say I could have handled it better, right? Because I think, I try not to think in terms of good and bad and better and worse and all those things.
That's too
very subjective
black and
terms,
white,
right? You know, I say, I realize there was a different way to approach this. Even with my own kids, I say, I realize I could have spoken to you differently, right? I could have addressed you differently. I could have asked different questions, right? And then speak more specifically to what it is I could have done differently.
Right, because what does better mean, right? At the end of the day, when you say better, what does that mean? Like, what somebody's left with, like, well, okay, better, like, define better.
Well, because yesterday maybe it was based on the information and where I was at. It was my best response in that moment, right? Mm-hmm. But it doesn't mean, because better reply, you know, to me implies like, well, yesterday I didn't show up well, right? Well, maybe it was the best way I could show up with what I was working with yesterday.
No, but I'm just saying,
today I found that I could do it differently.
But I like what you said when you say to somebody, like, I could have done it better. When you say that to somebody, what does that mean to them, is my point. Like,
right. Oh, I don't know.
You just said it was subjective. It is subjective. Right. So what's better to them may be differently than what's
different.
Different is different. That you can't define that, and a person can't think, okay, that's going to elicit curiosity.
Right.
Rather than all of a sudden make somebody judge or think, oh, this is better to me. Like, now you're having two different viewpoints of better. But when you say different, the other person automatically thinks, oh, how different?
Well, right. If I come back and say somebody that I could have showed up better.
Because you can't define different for somebody else.
They might say, well, that doesn't feel better to me. Better would look like this, right?
Yes. So it is subjective, and it is individually, it's how, whatever you define it as. So, but if you say different, that makes a big difference, right?
You know, I'll never forget, I said to somebody that my goal is to show up every day better than the day before. And somebody said, that's impossible. Yeah. We're all going to have days where, despite our best efforts, we're gonna fall down, right? And I hate to say fall back, right? Because again, that implies that there's like, we can either go forward or backwards and that's not how life works, right? So there may be a time where, okay, I could have done it differently, right? So what did I learn? And I love this. I got this quick 3-minute YouTube podcast months ago. And I said, before you go to bed at night, do 3 things. First, reflect on what went well today. Yeah. What didn't go well today, and what am I going to do differently tomorrow based on all this information? Yeah. And that's it. And that simple reflection, I sometimes do that on the way home, unless I'm talking to you. It's just really that reflection, right? But some days this whole idea that every day is better than the last, that implies that we're in some infinite straight line to perfection. And that's not
linear,
how life does not work that way.
Shooting to the stars.
Sometimes it's, one step forward, 2 steps back, 2 steps forward, 1 step, whatever it is. And everybody learns and grows at their own pace. Nobody should ever feel ashamed of where they're at, and I should be better than this, or I should have known better than this, or if somebody says to you, you should have known better, and I've heard that a lot in my life, like, I'm sorry, but, I am doing... I know personally that every day I show up and I wake up in the morning and I say, I am going to do the best that I can.
Well, to be the best version of yourself, whatever that is, in any individual day. But I may have a bad day. I hate to use that term, right? Where I miss something, right? And I realize, So, but the thing is, the reflection, right, and even the repair within ourselves to say, okay, I reflected on that. I'm going to repair with myself. And I'm going to use this information to show up differently tomorrow. Right. I mean, we all have challenging days. We all wake, but there are challenging moments in those days. It doesn't have to be the whole day. It doesn't have to be challenging. You could have a couple moments where you struggled. But if you perseverate on that, then it's going to feel like the whole day.
Yeah.
Just like try to okay, this happened. I'm going to make my next interaction, more productive or do it differently next time. And you will have many opportunities throughout a day, especially if, you're working with people or whatever you're doing.
And it's the opportunity, right, to learn. And I think every person, every situation I go through, every interaction is, what can I learn from this?
Yeah.
If if something doesn't go well at work, or something doesn't go well with my kids, or even a conversation with you doesn't go well, right? There was some kind of tension or whatever. Well, what can I learn from this so I can do different?
Right. How did this just happen? How can I learn from it?
And that's a personal transformation. That's why we're here today.
That's right.
And every week we show up here because we want to share the personal transformation. But it doesn't mean that every day is better than the last, or every week is better than the last.
Yeah.
We're not perfect. We're going to learn, develop, keep growing, keep transforming is the goal.
Yeah, and I think effective communication is the heart of a relationship. Literally the heart. I mean, you could love somebody, and be attracted and have, but if you can't communicate effectively in every way, not just with words, but with intimacy, with gestures, with who that person is. I mean, that effective communication is the heart of every good relationship. And I think even if you're fighting all the time and you feel like I can't fight anymore, well, you can fight. There's nothing wrong with a good juicy argument. I always say you can get into heated.
Be respectful. Don't use names.
Right.
Don't never call people names, right? And that is not, because what you're going to do is you're going to inflame people or bring up things from the past, like you did this 10 years ago, or, focus on the present moment, focus on the conversation, discussion at hand, without judgment, without defensiveness. Stay curious.
You don't want to shut down. I think the biggest thing is when people they get so upset and they feel so offended, they walk away.
Right.
That's the biggest mistake you can make. Shutting down and walking away is never a good thing.
Right.
You want to be able to sit there and continue to, even if it's uncomfortable, even whatever you're feeling, it's so important to be able to continue to talk and come to some outcomes, come to some conclusion, come to some decision about what you're fighting about.
And I think even though, yes, I 100% agree with you, you want to try and get to a positive outcome. But if you are so triggered because of a part, as we talked about earlier, and you're so upset, then maybe you do need to say, you know what, I am not ready to have this conversation right now. I want to have this conversation. Right? It's not that I never want to talk about this, but I can't talk about it now from a space that I'm going to be curious. So knowing that, I would appreciate if you could give me a few hours. Or later this afternoon, I'll come back to you when I'm more settled. Yeah, right?
I wouldn't give it more than a day.
Right.
Like if you wait more than a day, you're never, you're going
to forget what happened.
You're going to forget,
You don't want to do that. But I think it's important if you're heated, right, and you're like on fire inside, that's not time to have that discussion perhaps because you're going to
if you get over emotional, if you get, if it escalates to where you're super emotional and you start to cry, or it's not to say you shouldn't. I mean, you should feel what you need to feel.
Right.
But it's very hard when you're kind of hijacked by your emotions
You might need
to
take
have.
a step back.
You need to step back, but you also need to care about yourself. You need to care for yourself and hope your partner cares for you in that way and just lets you feel what you need to feel, understands that you're having very strong emotions about whatever you're talking about. They may be too. So find comfort in each other, knowing that you will continue the conversation, you'll get somewhere with it. But right now, it's just too difficult.
And respect the other person's need to have a little space for
Yes.
They say,
Yes.
I just need an hour to myself, a couple hours to myself.
Yeah,
Respect
I just
that.
need a little time.
Yeah, don't take it as a rejection.
No, yes, that's it, right. So much. Please try not to take it as a rejection because it truly isn't a rejection. It's that person just really needing space.
Right.
They're not rejecting you. They just need time to get themselves together because maybe they're struggling with the vulnerability of it. And that's what they're struggling with. It's about them and their emotions and the vulnerability. Not that they don't trust, but maybe they don't. Maybe you need to work on trust in your relationship. I mean, that's critical.
Absolutely. So I know we have to wrap up, and I think you mentioned something I would love to get into, and it's going to require us to be vulnerable, I think. But talking about communicating around intimacy, right? And within a committed relationship, those needs. I think that is a place that probably a lot of couples struggle with.
Yes.
So I'd love to kind of talk about in front of the camera a little bit about how we deal with that and how we've dealt with that in the past.
Yeah, it could get tricky. And if you let it go for a long time, I will say this, if that happens and you feel there's like that becomes a bigger and bigger and bigger thing. So let's say when you first got together early in the relationship, you were close and you had no problem and you got intimate easily and it was fun. And then something happened and now you don't really talk about it, or you're embarrassed to initiate, you're afraid you're going to be rejected. That just gets bigger. And the longer you wait, the bigger that space becomes. And now it's just huge elephant in the room that no one wants to talk about.
Right. And then people live in sexless marriages and they think, well, I've been married 10 years, so it's normal.
It's not normal. Frequent sex is normal, not the other way around.
And it actually is part of an effective communication plan between
to me, it's so funny.
and connection.
One of my doctors said it's the glue that keeps the relationship together, and it literally is. It is the glue. Communication is the heart. Intimacy is the glue.
Right.
It will hold. It's the binding that holds a relationship tight and together and keeps you in a good place.
So stay tuned because that'll take a little research on our part. Not sure it'll be next week, 2 weeks from now, but I definitely think. Because this podcast is partly to help other couples see how we communicate. And doesn't mean we're perfect. We do a lot of work. We share a lot of resources on the YouTube notes. We're trying to take what we've learned, put it in action, and share it with others how that's resulted in better outcomes for us. So if you have any comments, feel free to share them with us. If you like the episode, hit the like button. Please subscribe and visit our Instagram page as well as Personal Transformation EXP. Any other closing comments you want to make, Maureen?
I would say if you need a resource, Esther Perel has a wonderful podcast. She also has a card game that you could play that can break the ice if you're struggling.
Yeah.
That she has. We actually have that game. We haven't played it yet, so maybe we should do it before next time.
Yeah, I want to. I definitely want to. And we also, Jefferson Fisher is a big influence too.
Yes.
On effective communication.
Yeah.
He just came out with a new book. I think he kind of talks about the stop arguing piece too. But
he does.
So,
he's a lawyer, so that's
yeah. So a couple,
his job is to argue.
Resources, but like you said, we share them out on our YouTube channel as well. The Personal Transformation Experience.
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you.
Hope you found this helpful. Have a great week. Goodbye now.